Yeah.
I know it's not that much, but it's still, it's like. The turn. Josh. Josh. You think that they. Validation. Yeah. You check out your social media. No, like.
Next time, learning experience. Next month.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready? It's not for, I was just giving it a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Sorry,
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to pull us to order in about a minute or so. You guys could get the issue. Good evening. Thank you for coming to the Ward 5 now. Great to be here on campus. I'm glad I'm facing that. We have a good agenda tonight, I think. We have some very interesting topics. I know Mr. Denson, you're here to talk about helping the homeless. I think we have something about the great cleanup, river cleanup, to talk about as well. And we have Lieutenant, I'm sorry, your last name? It's Di. That's nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming to give us a report. So that I will ask if we could have a roll call, please, Sally.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we'll be at the Ward 5 NAV meeting at 5:37 p.m. Frederick Vieira, absent at this time. Carly Borchard, absent at this time, but she did let me know she is on her way. Gary Cecil.
Here.
Thank you. Bryce Chisholm.
Here.
Carol Crane. Here. Thank you. One addendum to the agenda, Mr. Gaylord is no longer on the NAP, so I will not count for quorum. And then Mr. Jeff Harvey.
Here.
Perfect. And then council liaison, Councilwoman Taylor. Here. Thank you. And then myself is present, Abigail Norga for staff liaison. Carly has arrived at 5:38 p.m. for the record. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Then we'll go to the first order of business. So this is the opportunity for anybody to make public comment. Doesn't have to be about an agenda item. So I would ask if you have a public comment you'd like to make in person, please stand up, state your name. We would love to hear from you.
So, Ken Becker, 1306 Canyon Creek Road, 2 items. One, I live right adjacent to Canyon Creek Park. I know there's a line item in the city budget this year for new planning and changes to Canyon Creek Park. I'd like for the people, at least that are adjacent to that property, to be able to be notified how they can have input. There are some things like commercial bits that are very underutilized, and things like the basketball hoop, there's only one very overutilized. That's in with the review. The other has to do with traffic calming device on Ambassador, just a few feet north of Bankside, where they put this in a couple of years ago, where it's kind of a chicane with some vertical rubber posts, and they have to replace 2 or 3 of those posts every few months. I imagine they're probably $100 each, and especially after the snow, people bump right over them. Whereas up Ambassador Street toward Mayan, there's 2 speed humps that slow the traffic down every bit as much as they no maintenance and don't attract litter. And the area that I'm talking about, there's also an urban trail on both sides. And it's kind of confusing. I mean, there's no crosswalk there, but it's also with that traffic calming device, it's confusing just how to cross.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate those comments from the.
Gary, Matt Crosby for the record, just to help this gentleman, a week from tonight, our commission and recreation commission had a meeting over at McKinley Park, and they're just going through the stages of what they're doing with the park, it's gonna be, it's not a short one deal, it's probably gonna go for the next year, but you might want to watch it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Mark Randall, 255 North Sierra Street. I'm just want to say that we're really happy to see that that movement is moving to around the community. I hope we get more participation by members of the community. I understand that very good last time. So good job.
It is really great to get out to different places. Are there any other comments at this time in the room? Is there anybody Abby on Zoom?
Anyone on Zoom would like to give public comment at this time, please raise your hand. None at this time, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And then Deanna will be passing out forms for those who gave out public comment to fill out, so thank you.
Any written public comments? For
No, Mr. Chair, none received as of 4 p.m. today.
Thank you, thank you. Going on to the next item, just a few in-house things we have to get through. We need to, anybody have any suggestions, any changes to the agenda? Just published anything, any change you're looking for? Nothing, no? In my case, I ask because does anybody who could give me a motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda for April 11th.
Our main board chair, I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All approved, thank you. Did everybody get a chance to get a look at the minutes for the February meeting? Any corrections, or questions, or concerns about that?
Very thorough.
Yes, really well, wasn't it? Very. So again, I'll ask if there's a motion to approve.
Board chair, I'll move to approve.
I said the one second.
All right. Everybody be very please say aye.
Aye.
Approved, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Time now for Kathleen, for your council liaison.
Thanks everyone for being here. I understand we've had a snafu with the parking. We'll take care of that next time. Apologies. And we were trying to get more people from the UNR area to come to the NAP. So that's why we're here. I can do my glasses. Couple of updates. Tomorrow at City Council, we'll be going over the placemaking study and voting on whether to accept the recommendation for that. Meeting starts at 10 a.m. On May 6th, we have our community cleanup at McQueen, and that is also going to include e-waste. So if you have hazardous materials, you can bring them too. That's from 9 to 12 at McQueen on May 6th. I just heard from RTC on the Keystone and McCarran line. That's going to be on their next agenda. So that's moving forward. Not the last thing. Oh, Abby wanted me to mention that there's the UNR baseball game Saturday against Air Force. And then I wanted to bring up, okay, that's it. No. So when we first started meeting, we talked about getting the NAB more involved in projects and changing the scope of how we work a little bit. One thing that I wanted to bring to the spotting was to see if you would be interested in taking on a community project. And I don't know what that looks like. You guys would have to determine what's important to you. We would give you the guidelines for what you needed to select. And then tentatively, we would fund that up to about $5,000 for you guys to decide what to do. One of the examples might be working with the Karma Box Project or working with homeless outreach, just as an example, but you guys would have to decide. So maybe at our May meeting, we can talk a little bit more about what that might look like and if you guys are interested in doing something like that. And then our next meeting will be at City Hall. Parking is free. Any questions? Okay.
First of all,
Gary?
when you say up to $5,000, you know it's not going to be anything less than that, right?
That's my kids, you can have $100. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I did have one comment, one thank you, and one question. First of all, I really enjoyed the online newsletter. It was great.
But thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I liked the fact that you had the summary up front where you knew what was coming and what people would say, oh, I would think about that. It was crisp, it was clear, so I think we really liked it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
The second thing is a thank you I've given to you personally, but I want to do it on the record. And I know my friend Art Rangel here will echo this. We were both very excited about the Title IV refinement came before council.
We're excited.
Just towards the end of last month. And I know for a fact that you're instrumental in this. I think it's a great way to look at it. Just if you could please continue to make sure that the residents, as well as the businesses, that we all have a chance to have good input as early as possible.
Of course.
I think that would be great. And we've reached out to Ashley and, offered our help in any way that we can for that too. But thank you for doing that. I think that potential changes to the code is a good underlying thing to look at. It's very, very good. And also just want to say, I was excited about the presentation on the redevelopment agency. And 2025 looks like it could be a feeding frenzy for funds, which is a good and bad thing. But I'm hoping that we can learn more about that through the lab as well, because it's complicated stuff.
It's very
Yeah,
complicated.
it really is, but it's still exciting, and there's some opportunities for the district that encompasses a lot of the downtown area.
Agreed. And I think we're going to start using those a lot more effectively.
That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to throw out my 2 cents. I think I mentioned to you before I did the Washoe County Leadership Academy. And we're graduating actually this Friday. And one of our projects was a community project for up to $5,000. And the only thing that I might say is timing was very limited for us. All this working folk. We had about 6 months, believe it or not. We would think that would be plenty. We just couldn't.
You guys are gonna take control of the schedule, the budget, the scope, whatever.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's wonderful. I think a couple of really good projects came out of it. We had 2 different groups through the academy, so 2 different awesome projects. So.
It sounds like you know exactly what we were gonna be doing. You can lead it.
Yeah. But I think it would be cool. So I love the idea and suggestion.
Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item D6 then, which is the start of the LCM report.
Abigail Mayorga for the record. I just want to echo council members' updates in regards to the community cleanup. We're super excited. Our team member Sierra has been working really hard, so e-waste and hazardous waste is available. So please use that opportunity. We will be doing a fall cleanup with dates and time to come, but this is your first chance. I know a lot of you guys are doing community cleanups and spring cleaning, so make sure to use that opportunity. First come, first serve. Additionally, again, echoing, our next meeting will be at Reno City Hall, just so we can kind of start this project idea and have all the capabilities and take notes and just be in our house to get the foundation started. And then I think that's all I had in regards to updates. If you guys have any questions, or I see some new faces in the crowd as well, feel free to grab my information and I can answer any constituent concerns or anything that you guys have going on or questions. So I just wanted to make that available to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Appreciate it. Going on to the business items, B1. We have to choose, we rotate the chairperson for the committee, and just wondered if anybody else would like to take it for our main meeting.
I'm happy to get it.
Thank you, Carl. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll just bounce it back and forth, right?
Sure. Moving on to item B2, Reno RPD quarterly report. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
I was telling some of the other NEMs, although you guys don't see me that often, I have 4 out of the 5 based on my schedule, so it's repetitive for me. So if I go a little off script, because in my head that's kind of already done a bunch of times. So I believe you asked me about some of the crimes against persons, because in the map, it's like this big, and you just see a lot of dots. So everybody looks at their page with all the data. The first 3, so aggravated assault, assault intimidations, and assault simple. All 3 of those are going to be crimes against persons. They should see other that one. Right, so that's the crimes against persons. So I looked at that just to give a general idea of what we're looking at. Oh, okay. So one was, I'll try to keep this as simple as possible, but we call it a triangle 1016, which is domestic. So boyfriend and the sister of the girlfriend don't get along. They have some words, he pulls a knife on her. She doesn't feel threatened, he leaves, we get there, so that's one, so it's considered an assault with a deadly weapon because of the knife. Another one that was downtown, was a guy was walking along 4th Liberty. He saw a guy he recognized from the shelter, they had a good exchange, stabbed one time. I don't even think he noticed it because he walked all the way to work, he worked at the bowling stadium, and then that's when we got the call, and he did have a pretty good single laceration stab mark, and we didn't, like, that's all he said was, I just saw a guy I recognized, talked to him for a little bit, he said, where are you going? They had some exchange, and then one time, and that was that one, and those are the first ones, everything else was smaller. Looks like we had one where someone got a TPO violation, and so they just got phone calls from someone they shouldn't have. That was that. That's the assault intimidation part. Then we go down to the assault simple. So that can be either a threat or like a simple battery or a lower tier, like fight kind of thing, where hurt somebody enough to break a bone and put them in the hospital. Generally, that's going to be like an aggravated battery. But the assault simple stuff is like someone pushes you. One of these is actually girl was walking downtown and someone like grabs her butt. And we stop a guy that matches the description, but she wasn't sure if it was him or not. So that's the kind of stuff we get reported. Another one had, sorry, is this too much? No, all right, we'll let it fly. One was someone owed someone else money and they went to ask for it and they freaked out and like pushed them to get out of my room. So that was a simple battery. We had a neighbor argument over a dog. And they felt threatened, although there was no actual threat. They just reported that. And then we had a drunk guy at one of the bars who got cut off and then refused to leave. And then he fought security. And then we have one of the casinos, told the guy he had to leave. And he spit on the security guard and ran out. We had another guy who just apparently lost his mind because he went around the hotel banging on doors, threatening to fight everybody. And then we got there and he wanted to fight us too. So he lost. And everybody signed a complaint for the threats. He had like 4 different counts of the disturbing of peace or the assault, plus fighting the cops. So he had a bunch of stuff to deal with later. And then, let's see, we had another guy who was drunk downtown and he was throwing cones around in the streets. And so someone said, hey, knock it off. So they got into a fight, and when we got there, and he fought us, and then spit on one of the officers. So apparently that's going to be spitting. And then there's another one that was, oh, this one was interesting. So this one I remember reading, this is where I stopped. I had there's a short notice, I couldn't read all the reports because they're mind-numbing. But this one was really entertaining. So they're at a bar and these people are watching like kind of a dispute happen. So they do the standard lineal, and they pull out the phone, they start recording it. The disturbance side of the house got very offended. And then they focused all their energy on them, came over, and then someone else came to like their aid, and then it was like this big melee kind of thing. And so those people, the people that just picked up the recording, got the bad end of the stick. And then the female half got like drug out by the females, and then the male got like choked or beat up. So they didn't have any footage. And when we went into the bar, no one knew what we were talking about, and when their cameras didn't work. So that happens sometimes, but that was kind of an interesting one compared to the normal stuff I see. So that's about all I have on that for your request, sir. Thank you. And then the other thing I saw was I looked and GTAs pop up a lot. It's kind of high. You guys are lower compared to some of the other wards. But just on that, when I look at the reports, some of the patterns I noticed, and I can't believe people still do this, but with warmer weather, hopefully it doesn't happen, but people warm their car up in their driveway or out in their street, apartment, whatever, and then they generally don't lock it. And someone who's been up all night on drugs, walking by, sees the car, and then they jump in it and then take off. And they generally drive it until it runs out of gas, and it is where it is, and then we recover it within a couple of days. And so that would generate 2 of these in there. So we would have the initial theft and then the recovery. So sometimes stuff gets stolen from Sparks, it drops in and it gets recovered or towed from a Reno property. And then that's what pops up. So if the numbers look high, don't let that alarm you. A lot of duplicates in there. Talking to some of the other boards. So my advice to you guys, don't warm your car up and leave it unlocked with the keys in it running. Don't leave it unlocked with the key in the cup holder. Don't leave it in your garage with the key in the cup holder and think that just because it's in your garage, it's secure, because all someone has to do is go through the side door, which again is obscure generally from the fence or something like that. So daytime you're at work, they come in. Some people can do the dog door thing. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to get in there. So that kind of stuff. And then we also noticed looking at these that sometimes people are getting work done on their car, get body work, repair work, maintenance, things like that. Sometimes they're being stolen from the yard because it's generally like a more industrial area that's less patrolled. So that's kind of the theme I saw and the advice I want to share with you guys. So if you see somebody, they're like, man, I'm so glad I don't have to warm my car up in my driveway for 10 minutes every day. Tell them not to do that ever. Wake up a little earlier and just sit in there or something. So that way you're not on my sheet. So, again, I don't know if I've done this work before, but generally I don't just read this stuff because no one likes it and it doesn't make any sense. So I'll kind of like pick 3 of like the top things and I'll look for themes and then what we can do as far as preventative measures, if that works for you guys, it works for everybody else. And then if there's specific questions, go through Abby, she'll email me that stuff. Generally give me a week or so. I'm pretty good about doing some of the research into it. So any other questions on anything?
Can I just ask my colleagues here, is anybody on that have a question? Yeah. Very good.
I guess the other high number is the destruction of property.
Yes. Well, so when I left those, I can't find a pattern. So that could be as simple as a graffiti, a rock, a BB gun through a window. I've seen a lot of tire slashings for destruction to the car, damage to the cars because of the separation kind of thing. So jilted levers. So I can't find a pattern that's like, hey, don't do this or don't do that. But that generally is all over the board with that because it's kind of a loose catch-all crime.
Could be anybody.
Could be anybody, could be anything, and generally people don't notice it right away. So if I went up to your car and I like just keyed, I don't like this word or whatever on your passenger door. If you go to, yes, yeah, go word 4 or whatever your nice survival list, you might not go to that side of the car. So it might be a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Did it happen at work? Did it happen in front of your house? Did it happen at a friend's house? Like when did it happen? So a lot of times we have a wide range of date and time, so it's really hard to investigate. So that makes it hard for us to solve. And then if you know who it is, you might know who it is, but for us to be able to prove who it is, that's another challenge.
There's a question for me. Just a couple weeks ago, we had some graffiti on our commercial building. And the graffiti unit came by, I think, literally same day and asked if he could fix it. I had thought that they were kind of obsolete, but they're obviously back. And do you guys work with them? How is
Yeah,
that?
so they're technically a game unit, it's a grant funded position. So we now look back to 2 techs. So we had 2 guys. So I was actually in that unit years ago when I was a sergeant. And kind of how it worked, one guy retired, and if anyone has ever worked for government, you can empathize with me. But we knew he was going to retire like 6 months before, and we said, hey, let's start the application process. And the city said, for what? Because there's no vacancy. So they had to wait until the summer, right?
Yeah.
So you have to wait until the vacancy exists, then you can post your backgrounds and do all the other stuff. So we're like 6 months behind. And so by the time we got that guy hired and then trained up, it was like a year later.
Gotcha.
So it was very challenging to get that once we had 2. So they generally drive around, they basically bisect the city. And they'll switch areas, but any complaint. So if you guys see graffiti, you call it in Reno Direct, that actually gets routed to that graffiti unit. They have 4 wonderful colors. They're very bland, but it kind of matches everything. They'll ask for a waiver. Did you have to sign a waiver or did you already have one on file? Okay, so they have 2 ways to clean it. One is they like hot wash it. And if that will come off, that'll be good. But like something like brick, they're not going to do that because they could etch your brick or they paint over it. So it's like gray, this horrible green, this horrible brown, like I don't know what's called the other color. It's like a reddish something. So But they are out and their goal is to have it done within 24 hours.
That's impressive.
So they're really good and they do like thousands a year. They do a lot of stuff that no one even realizes.
Such an incredible service.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Just so you know, why I asked that question, I wasn't drawing interest about all the crimes, but everyone else was interested. Well, a couple of them have happened. I'm always very defensive of downtown, but a couple of things recently kind of caught my attention. One was, there was a horrible set of reviews in the Reno R&R. Whether they're right or wrong, there's a perception in people who don't live downtown that it's dangerous. And yet, when I look at the tallies of the other wards, I see that Ward 3 and Ward 1 considerably higher tallies than Ward 5, which, you know, from the map, as you can see, this is a lot consolidated
Yeah,
areas.
3-1, you've been out for.
That was used too. Also, I'm a resident in Montage, my friend Mark is too. And we did a survey recently to find out what some of the issues were, not just related to the city, but in general, that our residents were concerned about. And the number one issue, far and away, was security downtown. So when I hear those things, they are not the kind of crimes that I was thinking might be of concern to residents. Because they seem to be more of a personal nature than they are just, you know.
Yeah, generally there's some sort of like acquaintance nexus at the minimum.
Yeah.
And again, on the advice column, and everyone in here looks to be pretty normal, but nothing good happens after 2 a.m. Nothing good happens after the 10th beer. Yeah, so well, we're control. And so, you know, a lot of like, you buy drugs and prostitutes, bad things might happen to you because that's not like some highly ethical realm of professions to where they're going to be like, oh, okay, here's your attention, you know, like bad things happen. And,
But that's why I asked, because I think that the devil's in the details. The tallies are helpful to see like the trend compared to others.
Yeah.
But the ones I think that people most get concerned about is they're going to go on the street, they're going to be in danger. From what I've heard, that may not necessarily be true, at least for the months that you reported.
probably not. I would, again, depending on the time of day, depending on what's going on downtown, and it sounds weird, but what I've seen, because a long time ago I was one of the mountain bike guys downtown. But generally, the more normal people that are there, it pushes out the bad element. So when we have our events, things like that downtown, I would say it's safer longer. Because, you know, that anonymity is kind of the friend of the bad guys. So they want that, you know, to be able to be the only people there. It's an easy target, but if all of us took a walk, nothing would happen to us regardless of the time of day because we're a big group, right? But if there was one of us, we're walking like this, or we have our phone out, we're not paying attention, you know, I don't want to say we're inviting it, but we're an easy target. So those kinds of things. Like you can always take mitigation efforts, but for the most part, downtown's pretty safe. You'll probably get asked for money as you like walk around, but outside of that, I don't think bad things generally happen unless you're highly intoxicated. It's a really late time of day, or you're like looking for trouble. It'd be easy to find if you're looking for it.
To that point, could I make a request for some additional information that I think might be useful on a recurring basis? I did make this public record request for this, and it was wonderful when I got it. For December 22, I asked for the detail behind the tallies for that particular month by crime, and asked for what location. I take it that these are for, are these tallies for where an arrest was made or where a crime was committed, or I know they may be the same.
Well, that's the hard part, right? So some of these, so if something bad happens right here and I go home and I report it, it's going to pop up with my home address.
Right.
And so it's not always where the crime occurred, it's generally where it's reported.
Okay.
And so we have, I was in high school when this first report writing software was designed.
Okay.
And so this was in the 90s, in case anyone's wondering. Computer software has changed a little bit since then, but not our system. So we have a really, really old system. We're looking to go into some new stuff. I think we purchased it. You guys think it's a great package for us. It's like $10 million. But I don't know how long until that gets implemented, and then that stuff's going to be amazing, and it'll give you tons of detail. I can bring my laptop next time if you want, and I have access to software called Esri, and it's just based on our like call center stats. But I can click, you want specific crimes, I can plug, I don't know if we can plug in. ads or not.
If we do it at City Hall, it should be good too.
Yeah, I could probably plug in and you can just look at stuff and get a better
It
idea.
wasn't so much that, the thing that was interesting to me, so because again, the tallies are good to see a trend, but there's so much beneath it. For example, for December, I was shocked by how many of the crimes were done during daylight hours. I thought there were going to be a lot more, up to 2 a.m. or something like that, but there really weren't that as many.
It's like an inverse, because normal people are at work, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to break in your house when you're home, you're probably gonna shoot me, this isn't bad, right? But if you're at work, and I break into your house, then I might have to like throw a steak to your dog and then take your son.
The other one, there were not a lot, I mean, I don't know if there are any hotspots, but the one in that in December, there were quite a few that were right opposite the casinos by their parking lots. And I wonder when the casinos just exit someone, if they don't just become your problem immediately.
Maybe, but also there's a lot of cars. So if I'm gonna break into a car, steal a car, I'm gonna go to where the cars are,
Okay.
right? And so I'll go to a parking garage and so you might see some diamonds and squares or whatever on that, they're concentrated downtown, and that's any mall parking lot, densely populated parking lot is gonna, it's a target rich environment. So someone will have left their door unlocked or their window down or a convertible, and then that's where the people go.
Thank you. I'm sorry for taking so much time. I know that's very.
Everyone likes to ask me questions. It's pretty long.
And yeah, any of that extra information would be perfect. Thank you for your time. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, how often do people get caught like on the ring cameras or whatnot and actually track down and?
So when it becomes a pattern, so the mask, like COVID was terrible for us because everybody had a mask and a hoodie or a hat, and then it was like, all right, who's this guy? And that's all we got was like a picture like this. That's less prevalent now, but it's still a lot of people wear it. If we see a pattern like time of day, day of week, things like that, we'll look at it. But if it's like a one-off, it's really hard to investigate until the property comes upon unless it's something super specific. But if you got, toothpaste from Amazon and that package is gone, it's gone. Right, but if it's like a very special, specific item, like a paddle bar board fin that's like for a certain brand, that's easier to track down because it's a unique item.
Sure, question.
Yeah, I've seen the map of Ward 5 here that it ends at Virginia Street, nothing east of Virginia Street. Is that no longer in Ward 5, that area, like Record Street and Evans?
I was,
No, ma'am, it's not, no longer.
It-
After the redistricting, yes, we lost that portion.
Oh, yes.
and I am not in charge of that, so.
Yes.
But then, like, you just zoning, because none of that makes sense to me, just the way it looks anyway. Anything else? Anyone online? Pam?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you very much.
Going
on to item 3, where the presentation of Dan Benson has been homeless. I think this is one item, Brent, that I requested. I know that Washoe County, rather than Reno, handles a lot of the CARES camps, safe camp, things like that. But gosh, I'm still really interested in helping others out.
Who would agree that homelessness is a really big issue? And so like, and the thing is, and I've been, from personal experience, I was spent time on the streets myself, been there in that 9 years, on and off the streets, and 3 years just really in it. And so I have what some people would call me a subject matter expert on homelessness and addiction. I'm a subject matter expert on my homelessness and addiction. So what worked for me, it might not work for that guy. And so we have to identify, like, so what is it? And then there's a few things that I want to go, and I'm gonna try to run through it quick. I speak how I think, so I'm gonna be all over the place. But it'll all come full circle and make sense. And I encourage you that write your questions down. If you have questions, write them down and remember to ask them after the video, because they were saying, like, you should do something similar to the TED Talk. I'm like, why don't we just show the TED Talk? It was great. But there's a few things that I want to point out is, when it comes to homelessness, the question is, and you'll all ask, right? Is it homes? So there's, is it homes? Is it addiction? Is it mental illness? I'll answer that in a second. And then when it comes to solutions, right? You have two schools of thought. right? You have the bootstraps, school of thought. What does that mean?
Boots on.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is which would be the organic autonomy, you know, give them autonomy, they'll organically work their way out. So like organic, if I scribble, it's because I don't know how to spell it. Organic autonomy. And then the third thing would be the 4 types of homelessness, because it's not like every homeless person is the same. We can get there the same way. If you ask, you know, everybody what their story is, there's similar things, but there's different types of homelessness, and it breaks down to about 4, and there's very different ways of solving each one of these. And so there's like 4 types. And then the last thing would be, what would the last thing be? I was thinking of it over there. It was this finger. The 4 types of homelessness. And then it would be the 3 ways to help. Because everybody wants to help. And sometimes when we help in the wrong direction. We're not thinking of the bigger picture. What we lack is what they call second order thinking. We're not thinking of the outcome of the outcome. And this could cause bigger problems. So if you look at, I'm just going to run through it real quick. And if you have any questions, like let me know, we can answer them after. Is housing going to solve the homeless problem? No. We have 700 homeless people on the streets right now. If you were to build a building and put 700 one-bedroom apartments, and we take all the people and we put them in the apartments and we give free rent for, what do you think will happen in the apartment complex? We'll burn it down. We'll burn it down. That's what they're doing in San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver. We're doing a housing first model without the wraparound services or the continuum of care. You're going to hear that a lot when people are speaking. These are like really good buzzwords, right? Continuum of care. Wraparound service, it sounds good, but define, right? And what comes with that? And so I can look at you doing outreach, right? And we burned this housing thing because we lost our inventory of the houses by grabbing someone in a tent, being like, hey man, you want a house, man? You want to get a house? You'd be like, yeah, no, I don't have a house. And then I can look at your tent and tell you what your apartment's look like. Don't put that in your house. Because his apartment looks just like that tent, and you burn that property manager will never get. So we're like, well, why do we have this? Why are they raising the rent? We did that. So that's one issue. And we can go on about what we see in other cities. Addiction, is that a problem? Absolutely. Mental illness, absolutely. So I truly believe, and it could be controversial, and people say people will battle or will push against that idea, and I'm willing to debate anybody on it. But the only way that you'll be able to solve the housing problem and the mental illness problem is by targeting this. Because you don't get to know like what mental illness somebody has while you're actively using. It is very difficult. It is very difficult to identify or to process previous, because in this area, they say that it's childhood trauma caused this. Yeah, it did. Absolutely. But it's difficult to identify your childhood trauma while you're actively creating more trauma. Every day on the streets is traumatic, right? Every day you're stacking and you're piling. So how are we going to identify how we got here? It's difficult to process why you're doing drugs. While we're high on drugs. It doesn't work like that. And so if you want to, when I was on the streets, I was diagnosed bipolar, I was diagnosed with depression, and I really held on to that, but I was doing a lot of meth. So of course, I'm going to be manic and depressed from time to time. And I was depressed because my life sucked. You should be depressed, right? And so it's difficult to identify. And then strangely enough, when I got clean, of course I moved through a lot of emotional and things like that. But when I got clean, this wasn't such an issue anymore. And I was able to, and some people it is, right? Sometimes it's the chicken or the egg. Are we using because we're self-medicating, or have we created a mental illness? And we can go into that from using and being on the streets. so much, right? And there are constants on the streets that will see to it that if you're on the streets long enough, it's about 130 days, that you will develop a mental illness based on the things that happen on the streets. You will get sick just from living on the streets. Now, the four types of homelessness. So I truly believe here, if you ever want to solve a problem, I would say this is far right, this is far left. I should have wrote them the other way. Bear with me here. Is in order to solve this problem, you got to be a radical middle. Right down the middle. You got to be open up for all ideas, and you have to hold space for every type. Now, the four types of homelessness, real quick. One is what we'll call the severely mentally ill. The other one is what we call the vagrants. I'll remember the name in a second. The other one is the separatists, and then the fourth is severely mentally ill, voluntary nomads, separatists, and I'll remember the fourth. It's like, what's wrong with me fourth today? Severely mentally ill. You're not going to solve this with shelters. You're not going to solve it with housing. You're not going to solve it with counseling. You're going to solve it with a what they would call a secured psychiatric facility. Right? And what they would, back in the day, they would call them mental health facilities. Remember, they shut them all down. So it was this wave, and it's nobody's fault. It's like, Reagan, get it? Well, no, it was everybody. Yeah. Well, it wasn't Reagan did what everybody asked him to do. There was this deinstitutionalized America thing. And it made sense. And a lot of things were happening at once. Right? If you ever read the book, The Anatomy of an Epidemic, it talks about how, we started trying to medicate people. We're looking for a magic bullet to solve this mental health issue. And then you get into American psychosis, and they start talking about how we were dealing with diagnosing people, and then you start talking about we start getting into different things, and how homelessness switched from situational. So homeless, right, was usually situational. It was when people were displaced. It was after wars. There you go. Mom. So it was usually after wartime, or after something where people were displaced and they were traveling home. That's why they call them hobos. Hobos stood for homeward bound. And so it was situational. And then it went from situational when all this stuff started happening with mental illness, with misdiagnosing people, and then drugs started to change. Right, and all these things kind of peaked together, and then it turned into behavioral. Mental health and drug addiction, right? And but we were treating it like it was situational, and so that's why it grew so fast. And so now you have, then you look into the voluntary nomads. I would say that those are the guys that are mostly on the streets right now. What you see, these are the guys that if you ask them, do you want to get off the streets? They're going to say, yeah, I want to get off the streets, but they lack the wherewithal, the capacity to do this, or the drive, or the know-how to actually get off the streets. And we'll make it make sense in a second. And then you get into, and there's, gosh, I can't remember. I wrote the freaking thing. I can't remember the last one. I will in a second. It would come up and I will tell you. And then there's three ways to help, right? One way to help is you can help somebody survive. Well, what is that? Helping somebody survive is where you give them food, water, blanket, a jacket. And this is a harm reduction model. The only time that you should really help someone survive is when it's harm reduction. Like, dude, they need a jacket. You give them one jacket, you give them that just to keep them warm. Or they need some food. These are really hungry people, right? Where we fall short is that, we serve a lot of food. We serve a lot of food. And people will tell you that we're solving the food insecurities problem. And it's not true. You're solving the food options problem. And I can make that make more sense later if you have any. I can I'll make it make sense and I can prove it to you. And then I broke the dry erase marker, so because I'm so strong. Two is you can help somebody stabilize. Stabilize would be give them the things, right? So I give you a job, I give you an apartment, I give you mode of transportation, and then you can help somebody thrive, right? The higher you go up, the more likely somebody, so like, let's look at help somebody survive, right? They're alive. We're keeping them alive. It's a harm reduction model to help somebody stabilize. We get them into an apartment, we get them a job. But if you don't introduce three, so there's get the stuff and then there's keep the stuff. So I give you the stuff and I don't teach you how to keep the stuff. What's going to happen? You're going to be in a condition where I have to teach you or I have to help you survive again. And then I give you the things, but I don't teach you how to keep it. And then you lose it. And then I give it. And then you lose it. And after you do this so many times, you helped create this because it would make more sense for this guy to be successfully homeless than it does to suck at being housed. He knows it because we did not teach him the things, right? And where we fall short is we think that, just imagine expecting a baby to learn how to walk without falling. Stuff's gonna get weird, man. The baby's gonna have a rough time. People are gonna fall, right? And we have to set up systems, what they would call an ecosystem. Ready? Knock it off. Like what they would call an ecosystem of tiered mobility, right? It's not linear. So you put people in places based on their capabilities. In order to do that, you better know them. So we need to have systems that have people that are actually in the streets, working with folks, and we actually have to pay these people almost like first responders. It's going to sound heavy, but we can get into that later if you want to talk about that. I'm telling you right now, most people that work with the homeless folks are a check away from being a client. One check away from being a client. And these are the folks that we count on to get people off the streets, right? And it's important that we put a focus on our people, but we're not there yet. We will. We'll get there, but we're not there yet. So that's just the basics. If you have any questions about those, let me know afterwards and I'll be happy to answer them. The video is like 12 minutes. It really focuses on, because helping is a delicate situation, right? If you tell people to stop serving food, you'll have to fight them. I had a woman pull up, and here's one of the things. I had a woman pull up to our safe camp now, and they pulled out a banquet table. Now it's not just homeless people, right? That if you put a table up and you put free, that will line up. Go to Somerset, go to Collin Ranch, you put a banquet table out, you put free, get some empty boxes, put rattlesnakes in them, and people will want to take your rattlesnakes just because they're free. It's human nature, but I'll have 3 of these snakes. It's what we do. So it's not just homeless folks, but the gig is that this lady came out and she set up shop right in front of the safe camp. And my supervisor called me and was like, hey, there's a lady out here serving food. And I'm like, no. And she didn't ask anybody. She just threw it out and all the people pulled up behind her and they're getting ready to put their gloves on and they're putting their labels and lining up and setting up the things. And my people are lining up. I'm like, let me talk to that lady. And she gets on the phone. I'm like, hey, what's going on? She's like, just serving food, just serving food to our most vulnerable. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But we just ordered 46 meals from Catholic Charities this morning. So every meal that you serve, we'll have to throw them away. She's like, yeah, our food's better. I'm like, oh, make no mistake, I agree with you. It's probably the best food that they've ever eaten. And your food was probably maybe a little more love than the food that they normally get. But now we have to waste food. So it should be more thought out. And as just the same, I don't know if anybody's ever experienced drug addiction, but I'm sure you've been addicted to something. Maybe it's coffee. Maybe you make your coffee in the morning. You have a routine where you scout out, you put it with a French press and you this. When I was, it was heroin for me. I had a ritual. Right? And it's just as much about the ritual It was about the drug, and sometimes when we help, it's also about the ritual. And so when we do this, we have to be mindful of replacing it with that and adding an and. Does that make sense? So you're not, don't just serve food, but serve food and depending on what your desired outcome is. That makes sense? I hope my record the whole lot bigger. I do that all the time. All right. If you wanna show the feeling, please. All right. Yeah, you want to answer questions.
In my life to helping those experiencing homelessness change their circumstances. One of the reasons for this is because I myself was homeless. And in this journey, I learned a great deal about how people help. Which by definition means to make it easier for someone to do something. I want to share with you what I learned so that if you decide to help, you can make a more meaningful impact. So I'm going to take you back to one of the lowest points in my life. I've been homeless for 2 years, addicted to heroin and meth for 7. I was passed out next to a dumpster right behind the bar. I don't know if I was out for 5 minutes or 5 hours, but I woke up to warm water spraying on my face. When I lifted my head, there's a guy peeing on the wall right next to me. And I was like, hey, man. And he turned around, real change. He was about as kind as anybody in that situation could be. He apologized. I'm like, it's cool, man. It's cool. And we got in the car. I'm looking to say to his friends, dude, I just missed on a homeless guy. It's right. And he didn't come in. And that was it, dude. I wanted to change my life. I wanted to become a new person. I wanted to reinvent myself. But I knew that it would take a lot of work. I need a lot of help. The best ideas I could come up with at that time got me homeless, addicted, on. There's a lot of people out there just like me, just need some help. There's a lot of folks out there like you that just want to help. And I've been the recipient of all kinds. The helpful and the not so helpful help. What we're here to talk about today is the not so helpful help. A few years ago, I started a nonprofit called Karma Box Project, and one of the things we do is we do outreach throughout the city and along the river. We created a program called the River Stewards, where we enlist the help of folks living in a homeless camp next to the river to actually clean up in the camp and along the river banks, and we'll give them a gift card at the end of the day. It's a very successful program. We clean up a ton of trash, and we're able to build rapport with folks while at the same time giving them a platform for purpose. This ultimately helps us in establishing the engagement necessary to eventually get them off the streets. During the cleanups, we were made aware of how much trash is produced. In this particular camp, there were 300 individuals living there, and we pulled out 320 yards of trash a month. To put that in perspective, the average American produces 5 to 7 pounds of trash a week. Here, they were producing upwards of 40 pounds of trash per person per week. How did they produce that much trash? Is it because they consume 4 times more things than the average American? Is it because of the disposable lifestyles? Paper plates, paper cups, packaging, one-use items. Are they more wasteful than the rest of us? It's a combination of a lot of things. But one thing's for sure is that the trash itself told a story. Unused hygiene items, perishable foods, non-perishable foods, blankets, scarves, tents, cleaning tanks, packaging, all of the things, and when you pay attention, you know all of the things that helpers were bringing in abundance. Now, the giving was a harm reduction model. I totally get it. Just giving what's necessary to survive. That's not what was happening here. There's so many people and so many different groups coming all throughout the day, and nobody really communicating about what the other group was bringing and what the actual need was. And the people are lining up every time, even if they already have what's being given out. Folks experiencing or living in poverty have a sense of scarcity. So of course, they're gonna take what you bring, whether they need it or not, or whether it ends up in the trash or not. And this isn't just our community this happens in, this happens anywhere that overgiving takes place. And it's not just trash problem. What about the behavioral outcomes of overgiving? Watching this scene unfold reminded me of my own experience living in a homeless camp in Vegas. And the groups and the churches and the businesses doing service projects would come out in droves, especially on the weekends, bringing just about everything you could think of. And they were super nice people. We're very grateful. But I almost made it where we never really had to leave. I didn't realize my own deflation of psychological drive until one day my neighbors and I ran out of food, and instead of walking to the rescue mission, which is right up the street, to get food, when I say right up the street, I mean, you can see the Jesus Save sign from the front of our tents. Instead of walking there and getting food, we waited for someone to bring it. And they did. We've been conditioned to stay put. But I'm sure that wasn't the intentions of the helpers to create this unhealthy dependency on them. It's weird to think that helping can contribute to keeping someone safe. The accumulation of trash, the deflation of psychological drive. What about hoarding? Hoarding is a disability that was added to the mental health diagnosis manual in 2013. And from my experience living on the streets and doing outreach in the streets, there's a huge portion of the population that have this disorder. I'm going to introduce you to Sally February of 2021. She moved to this park with a backpack, a sleeping bag, a tent, and a cooler. And within 3 months, Sally accumulated this much stuff. How did she get that much stuff? Well, most of it was brought to her. It was brought to very good intentions. But good intentions can often translate to ineffective care. All of these things anchored her to this park. First of all, living in the park isn't a sustainable plan. Eventually, she's going to have to move. You can't take these things and leave in shelter. If he does decide to work a treatment plan, they're not going to be able to store them for her. And you can't just leave things away. These are her belongings, these are her things. So how did we help Sally? So far, everything we did to help Sally not only reinforced the hoarding, but created a barrier for her to get somewhere. It's important that the results of our help don't harm the individual or the community. And one way to minimize the damage of helping in the wrong direction is to be mindful of the unintended consequences. I want to make it clear that I'm not scolding or talking to helpers. Helping is absolutely necessary. This is how we grow. This is how we evolve as a community. Matter of fact, required to do it. Studies have shown that when a person behaves altruistically, the pleasure centers of the brain become more active. We just have to be more thought out in all aspects of helping. We have to ask ourselves, what are we helping the person to do more easy? What's the mission? Are you helping in a way that's going to help, that's going to get somebody housed or improve their situation? Or are we helping someone stay successfully homeless? We've all heard the saying, give a person a fish and feed him for a day, or you can teach a person how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. We like this saying, it makes sense. We know, we can all agree that the keeping of a fish can very well be a misappropriation of resources, especially if you do it over and over and over again. While at the same time, teaching someone how to fish, it might take a while. How much time exactly? Well, teaching a person how to fish translates into getting someone housed. It takes roughly around, according to some outreach providers, it takes roughly around 89 engagements, 6.5 different agencies, and 6 months to get one person housed. One person. So the question is, how can you help in a meaningful way if you have a limited amount of time? The answer is that you find an agency that already teaches people how to fish. You partner with that. Look for an agency that has the big values as you, that provides measurable outcomes. Look for an agency that's helping the specific spouse population that you want to help. Men, women, youth, families, vets. When you find this agency, volunteer for them. Or give monetary donations, or even join the board. Whatever you do, just get involved. Believe me, most nonprofits need your help. However, if you decide that helping an agency or partnering with an agency is your gig, you want to go alone, keep these 3 things in mind. 1, before you bring the things, ask what's needed. Often helpers will bring what they want to give and not what's needed. And most of it will end up in the trash of being hoarded. And yeah, that might mean 2 trips. Number 2, if you're starting in a park on the streets, stay long enough to clean up afterwards. For example, if you're willing to bring in 5 bags of goods, you should also be willing to take out 7 bags of trash. Because if you help contribute to the mess of waste, it's usually a good idea to help clean out afterwards. Because at the end of the day, you get to go home, someone else will have to manage the trash. Number 3, become a good resource broker. Learn about all the agencies in your community that help people suffering from substance use disorder, mental health disorder, those that are experiencing homelessness. Learn about every agency in your community that helps this population learn the criteria to get in, learn where they're at, how to get a hold of them, because at some point when you're helping, someone you're serving is going to be inspired to change. The window for change on the street is very narrow. So it's important that you act now and know where to send them or take them. One thing's for sure, it's the facts. So together, all of us in here, all of us outside of here, whether you like it or not, you don't need to not be in the vote. The idea is that so we're rowing in the same direction. Destination healthy community. And if one of us loses our ability to vote or falls overboard, it's important that we don't just throw them a life preserver and leave them there. We got only to the best of their ability. And it might take some time and work. In closing, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite quotes, and it's from a book entitled Community by Peter Block. He says, a community only grows out of the possibility of its citizens. And it's important. It's our responsibility to take those that are on the margin, bring them back into the center. Thank you. My mom was right there. She was right in front. She said, I know that. And then we gave her a standing ovation afterwards, like everybody, Graham's mom, and she stood up and she was so happy. It was great. Like, anyways, I put my mom through so much. Anyways, so do we have any questions? Do you have any questions about how to help? Because if you don't, then I got some suggestions.
So here's a little anecdote. Many moons ago, I was a police officer in a very affluent city. And we had a homeless person that would sit out in front of a 7-Eleven and get kids to bring her alcohol and that kind of thing. And it took me about 6 months. I was a crime prevention officer at the time. It took me about 6 months to engage with her and get her in to not a facility, but a place to live. She was there for 3 days. And because they had rules that she couldn't consume alcohol, she was right back on the street. Now, with 6 months of effort, day in and day out, engaging with her to get trust and to get her to go, and she willingly went. She lasted 3 days. So the question is,
What then? What now? I mean, how do you overcome this? There is an answer. So the thing is, so in 2020, they did an inventory when they're getting ready to build this CARES campus. And they did an inventory of how many programs, so that would be a program bed, it's a higher barrier. Of how many program beds were available in Northern Nevada. And there was about 400 beds available. And there's 700 people on the streets. Okay, so that's not working. And so so that's kind of a bootstraps thing. We're like, get your stuff, get off the drugs and get a job. Kind of. So, you know, and it takes a long time to build rapport. It takes a long time for folks to start trusting you. And we know this, right? Because folks got their guard up, right? They're protected. So, and let's just say that drinking's her thing, right? This is how, let's just say that in a world where nothing's consistent, your housing, your relationships, nothing is consistent, what always shows up? I'll bet you every time I drink, I get drunk. It is consistent. Every time I shut up, I got without a doubt. And so it's difficult to kind of just take that away right away. So there has to be, and I don't want to leave because I agree with housing first for certain situations. There has to be scenarios that are low barrier, which would mean that you don't have to be sober to be here. You're not bringing drugs or anything in here. You don't have to be sober because the thing isn't her drinking; it's how she behaves when she drinks. Right, so it's a behavioral thing, and is it difficult? We have it at the camp right now. That like you don't have to get sober to be here. But you will not bring drugs here. Do people bring drugs? Sure, they bring drugs. Are they stashing them in their room and doing that? Well, of course. But what do you want to do? Drug police, right? So we just focus on behavior, and of course they're up and down the tone scale, right? Sometimes they're super happy and drugs the coolest, right? And then when we start spiking them, that's when you have a problem. But the thing is there needs to be programs that work with folks on that level, right? And you have to have staff that are trained to deal with that. You have to have staff that are trained to like engage with folks when they're sometimes at their worst, when they're just way up on the tone scale, when they're really upset, when they're really sad. You know, according to the tone scale, you know, they say there's 108 right emotions. The very top emotion is serenity. You can't mess with me, man. You start to work your way down and you're happy and you're joyful. And as you go down, there's more. Can't name all the emotions. That's what, you know, that's why Buddhists have those rosaries, right? We got 108 of them. They just meditate on each emotion and they go down, and then there's anger, or there's sad, and there's anger. And the very bottom emotion, the last emotion you'll ever feel is death. And right above death is apathy. And it's a survival emotion. It's designed to keep you alive, because if you were to feel all the terrible things, you die. We have to, and I train my staff, is that if somebody's upset at you, well done, that's fine. You know, it's not you, they don't personally hate you or whatever. You know how many people have had tell me at the shelter that they had sex with my mom? I'm like, you probably shouldn't do that because April's really clingy. She won't stop clinging you. That's why my dad left. So we got to learn to not take stuff personally. We got to know that when people get mad, it's not at us. We got to know that when people are sad, it's fine. And so the answer to that is we have to have more programs for folks. We have to hold space for these people. We have to be properly trained. And it works. So we at the Safe Camp, our success rate is 46%. What do we consider success? Permanently housed, secured income. Permanent housing, secured income. And it takes, right now, one of our issues is people, when they go to fund stuff, they're like, how long does it take? And they want like 3 months, 6 months. 6 months is like the magic number. Does it take 6 months to change this person's life forever? I don't know. It took a whole lifetime to screw it up, you know. And so there has to be work, there has to be grinding, there has to be, you know, we have guys right now who on average of anywhere between 6 months to a year and a half to get people housed. That 6 months and a year and a half is very, very important, especially if folks don't have to be sober to be here to work with people. We start to be what we do. There's a cultural adjustment. There's an adherence to social norms. There's a how do we live in our pods, because we have We have pods, right? You create a system that's gonna model the system that you want them to succeed in. Right? I do it with my kids. I got my kids do the dishes. And they always complain, you know, Ashley, but he's 16 or 17. He's like, "You do the dishes, man." I'm like, I don't not do the dishes because I don't know how to do dishes. I don't have to do them because I don't know how to do dishes. You do the dishes because you need to learn how to carry your weight in any group that you're in. This is real life application. So we have to have more programs like that, more programs. I'm big on this. I mean, the first years ago, we couldn't have convinced me that it'd be a good idea to bring people in unless they're sober, but you don't get to help people unless you have that. So we have to have programs where we get to work with folks and hold that space, and they gotta be a little bit longer. Can't be, you got 6 months, get it, you know? So yeah, does that kind of answer? Okay. Anyone else?
What is your staff? Do your staff people like yourself that are extremely experienced? Problems?
Well, so a lot of times we want to do, what we'll do is lived experience, people that have been there or some have somehow related to it, because this will burn you out. This will burn you out. You got folks operating at the lowest frequency, you got folks that are, and it's not you, but people will burn out quick. So my staff, I'm really hardcore on training. And the thing is because, you know, what happens is it takes 6 months to build rapport. We say it takes 2 to 6 months for someone to tell you the truth. Because they've been telling this story, they fabricated a story that's helped them out for so long that, that it's just working. And you'll be, when somebody's telling you whatever story they have, you'll be working on some fictional character instead of actually working on that individual. Then one day you'll find out that the reason you can't get their ID is because they weren't born in Boston, they're from New York. They've just been telling this story for so long, and they've never really had a job, or they are a sex offender, and that's why they couldn't, but they didn't want to say it because it was so embarrassing. And so what happens is, if you don't have a staff that has staying power, you're gonna build a rapport with somebody, and then that guy's gonna, and you're gonna be gone, right? And you're gonna have someone else come in who's gonna take another 2 to 6 months, and then that person will be gone. So you gotta build a staff that's resilient, that understands motivational interviewing, tactical empathy, that understands that are resource brokers, right? Know all your resources, know where to send people when they're ready to go right now, because the window for change is real narrow. Do we have all these resources now? But the idea is to go to work. So yeah, we do, my staff is really, really good. But the thing is because of the pay, you got about 2 years for a really good guy, and he's like, I'm pretty good at some stuff. You got something in it, and you gotta let him go, right? You know, stay here. Should be cool, but I don't know if it works out like that.
I'll just say really quick, so you guys know what's coming. We are working on, I call it a pilot project, right, with Grant, the HOA, Somerset HOA, and another volunteer in Ward 5, and we're going to start working on some education campaign materials on some of Grant's messages. We don't know what that looks like yet. It's at the very early beginnings, but getting some of the messaging out, some of the education out. So hopefully we'll start seeing that. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item agenda B4, keep Truckee Meadow beautiful, the great community cleanup.
Perfect. And this will just be me. Hi, everyone. Again, Abigail Muir for the record, community liaison. This is something that I wanted to share with you guys. Councilmember Taylor will be participating. I will also be participating on my own, but this is the Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful Great Community Cleanup. So what that looks like is a great community cleanup that could keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful is putting on April 29th, 2023. The great thing about this, as you can see, there's multiple sponsors. There are different locations based on where you live. So there are a couple locations where you can sign up. It's not one park where everybody comes, rather the whole community, all of Northern Nevada, participating in cleanups in different locations, Sparks, Reno, all the way to the valleys. So I did want to share this resource with you. If you are interested, there are still spots available for multiple areas, and they do different things. It is free. They just ask you to sign up, and I think it's from 9 to 12, depending, and you don't have to stay the whole time. But again, it's a way to get involved. And I know that some of our city council members will be participating, and it's hopefully beautiful and will be a good. If you need further information or need help registering, I'm more than happy to assist. Yeah, and then you could just go to the website again here, as you can see, depending where you would like to go, there are multiple areas. So. Perfect, that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Abby. Moving on to one development related project we have tonight. Big Horn Town patio is asking for an alternative equivalent variance regarding landscape screening to the current landscape screening standards. Do we have somebody here?
I'm here for it. Yeah, my name's John from Paul. I'm not sure how you guys, you are observed or just.
Feel free to stay or whatever you.
You guys. Hi, Carly.
Even I'm saying.
Over here. Okay. Here by Abigail. Abigail, thank you so much for the communication today. It was so uncomfortable. I was at county commission, my item wouldn't come up, and then this was coming up, and I was texting with Abigail, so thank you very much. So, let me, this is a little bit technical, and I always hate the technical stuff, but we got to deal with it, right? Is there, can we calm the lights to show that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, grab the lights.
Brooke, are you going to be part of this?
Well, my name is Brooke Oswald, I'm with the city of Reno, I'm with the city of Reno, so if you do have any questions about the process or anything like that, I'm good to help answer those. I do want to just correct really quick, this is an alternative equivalent compliance, not a variance, so those are two different forms of flexibility that we have within our code. So it's compliance, it's just basically saying it doesn't meet code, but they are doing other things that come and meet or exceed our code.
It's actually a condition. So on the AEC, as stated by Brooke, again, my name is John Kropottek. I do land use, urban planning, development planning, all of that kind of stuff around the community for the last 20 some odd years. And I'm working with the property owner and the owner. So there's really two people involved here. The owner of the shopping center who built it some 28 years ago and impose a condition. And I don't want to get too in the weeds there, but I got to tell you a little bit of the background here. And then the applicant is Big Horn Tavern, who has occupied that space and has a beautiful business going. And we'll walk through that a little bit. So the AEC is a substitute to satisfy the landscaping condition that was part of the original SUP and a subsequent condition that we just had done in October in a site plan review. That condition, I'm going back to the origin here because it really is a weird set of circumstances. But the origin of this is that condition 4 that says prior to the issuance of building permit, the applicant shall submit a final landscaping plan and irrigation plan to the satisfaction of staff. So we're going way back in time because there was a violation of some noise and some activity that then resulted in staff getting involved here and saying, wait a minute, this condition was not really met. And so then we went through this process, which is the site plan review that was approved in October that resulted in another new landscape condition. And so let me go into this and hopefully I can paint the picture in the images. It's always better. Next slide, please. Thank you, Abigail. Okay, so I'm showing those images. This is as straight up as we can be because we don't have anything other than this sketch from 1994 that says, here's a landscaping plan and here was the condition that I mentioned to you. So prior to them doing, you're going to see a lot of images of how improved it is. Many of you might know about Big Horn in their backyard and it's beautiful as it sits today. But this is before they did the canopy and the outside improvements. And the point of this is there was not any landscaping that was substantive. That's the result of almost the last 30 years. That comes directly from the owner. He says, we didn't tear any landscaping out. Back in those days, it was extremely informal. Now the public process is so robust. And I'm just giving you as much truth as I can share with you. So I think about that. And the reason I'm sharing that is because what I'm confident in saying tonight is that if that was the landscaping that resulted from the condition in 1994, we're committed to do something that's way bigger with respect to meeting the code, exceeding the code, and particularly ensuring compatibility with the neighbors to the north, which is screening for the visual side, and that's noise attenuation. Okay, next. So now you can see, this is the patio as it sits today. You know, we were taking pictures in March and it was still snowing, go figure. But you can kind of see the wall's been there for a long, long time. There's some picnic tables. You can see on the left one, that big canopy that has heaters. There's a little, this one to the right is going further away, is a little temporary bar they have. The sitting area down below over here is where there's going to be different perspective. Again, we're trying to give it to you else. Now we're looking at the bighorn on the right as the TV screens. There's 4 of them there. As long as part of this process, those speakers you can sort of see in between the screens will be lowered. This comes from the noise expert. That will satisfy the TVs being there as long as we have the noise covered on the speakers, and then the hedge that's going to grow and cover the line of sight of the TVs. On the left is a little area that shows, again, an amenity area where they play, what do you call it? One of those, cornhole. There's the cornhole board. You can see it in the foreground. And further away again is the sitting area. So there's a lot going on in this patio. All legitimately approved by the city of Reno in a building permit. Then this violation came up. Next. Okay, so this is looking over the wall. The wall is approximately 6 feet. We have some spots where it's low. Nobody can explain that because there's a condition for a 6-foot wall. And it's all done in good faith because it's 6 feet on one side. It steps way down on the house side, so it's over 7 feet tall on that side of the property. Again, well intended and not a perfect world. So look at the picture on the left. That's from one of the residences, the yard you can see. And that's what you're seeing. So it's really fairly screened with the the elm trees that are in place there today. And then looking at the houses from the patio, of course, you'd have to be over 6 foot tall or stand on something to be looking over the wall. You don't see that unless you get up to 7 feet. Just to show you what's existing back there. Next. So I said our solution is to make it better, less noise and less screening. That's really what the code is asking for. And I've learned a lot in this process because the noise expert said it's really common. We accept conditions all the time as professionals in this business, negotiating with communities about doing vegetative screens for noise. He said there's basically no value. So here's what we came up with next. This one's a concept. This is not, there's 2 things I want to point out here. This is the evergreen screen. So the idea is we're going to make it very tight to the wall because they have hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements in this patio area with the canopy, the heaters, the TVs, all of that sitting area. I talked about the cornhole further that way. Then the bar that I showed is over here on this side. So we're saying, how do we make good with everybody in this process, the code, staff, and the community? And we said, we do the vegetative screen and a narrow planter area. This is the concept was done by our landscape architect, Mark Chappelle. And then what we have is these acoustic panels. And it's funny because I was in a tavern the other day. I had no idea. And my friend owns the place over there at Forest Street in California and says, you remember being in here before? And I said, well, I don't really think about noise. He said it was an echo chamber. They did these acoustic panels mounted only on the ceiling and it completely deadens the noise. So the noise expert, and I think the staff was very much on board with this. I know they were because several of them looked at it. You put these panels right here underneath the canopy there. You can see those are out, that blue outline is, that's those inserts or panels there. And the sum of all of that mitigation is way better than any vegetative screen that we can come up. It's extremely expensive, but the owner knows that he's in violation and has this responsibility to make this right. So that is not literal, that hedge is, all you do is go 2 feet tall. You can see that just graphically, and I guess scaling wise, it's more than 2 feet. But that's the idea. We're containing in a 2-foot area, I think even less. Vegetative screen, and then there's a maintenance provision and also full-time irrigation in there. And then acoustical panels everywhere we can put them. And then the other thing was lowering of the speakers on the other side, which seems to make simple sense to a layperson of this issue. Next, Abigail. Okay, so here's our plan, different perspective, and how you see in plan view. We can all kind of connect the dots here. So there's the hedge adjacent to the wall within the entire patio area. You see that we say horseshoes, and I'm not sure if doubles as horseshoes and cornhole, but that's the same idea. The fire pit and seating area, you can see it now a little more defined in the site plan. It's a nice little cozy area. And then you can see the outline of the covered patio area, which is where all those picnic tables were. And then there are some trees, you can see them kind of written in there, how big those diameters are. That's because they are mature trees, frankly, not in the best shape, and they're not trees of choice by any means with their elm trees in this area. But that is what's going on there. Then you can see on this south end of the drawing, the 1, 2, 3, 4 TV. Actually, there's a mistake here. I didn't notice this until right now. These are not going to be removed because we've met the condition of approval that says if you screen it and you do the noise abatement, you've met the condition. So we asked staff to allow us to keep those TVs there. But the existing speakers do need to be lowered. And then I mentioned about the smoking area, that's going to now be moved to this area only. Next, please. Line of sight, if this is too technical, I don't think it is. I mean, the idea is that we're not trying, it's not too cutesy. It's if you're sitting at a, that's all, kind of known stuff in the profession, sitting at a table on your patio, what are you going to see? Well, it's because it's 6 feet lower right here. This tapers down to 6 feet lower than the bottom of the wall. Plus the wall is 7 feet on that side. It's going to project your line of sight on the edges, which is what we're trying to accomplish. 75-foot separation, which is a lot. And you see the existing trees, and then there's our evergreen hedge. Nice. Say Abby like I know you, but it's. And then this is looking view of the wall from the residence, different perspective, but you get the idea. You see how it steps down. You can see the one label there shows 7.3 foot height, 8.7, 80 feet 7 inch height, and it's just because of the different elevation. So there's some kind of built-in stuff that's working for us. We've all come to agree to that when you're sitting in a hole looking up, your line of sight is such that it's looking at the top of the building or toward the top of it with some adjustments of the TV. And then there's the AEC standards. I mean, this is really aggressive. I don't think I want to go through all of these because it really is some technical stuff, but basically the key stuff is there's really two things going on. Noise attenuation for the Saxelby acoustics, and I've already mentioned all of those. The lowering the speakers, the acoustic board on the inside, the masonry walls, and then also on the underneath the canopy, and then there it is there. Item number 3. And then the visual screen is the sum of leaving the wall, number 1. 2 is the hedge. 3 is the limitation of activity restricted up to 10 p.m. And then condition of approval number 4 is the doors and windows on the, really it's the north side of the building where the interaction is with the neighborhood will remain closed at all times except to allow for patrons and employees coming and going. And then outdoor number 5, entertainment and outdoor live entertainment shall be prohibited at the site. I think that is, do I have anything? Oh, that's just zoning. Yeah, you can see that there was no zoning issues. It was all about. Then was there another, oh, there you go. I mentioned the team. Kim Gardner is the owner of the tavern. Steve Buck's the owner of the center, Mark Chappelle and myself. And that covers it. I'm here for any questions you might have.
I have one question.
Yes,
With respect to the neighbors and listening, and I know you're trying to mitigate the sound, is there, in the code for the city, is there a decibel maximum that you have to stay beneath?
there is a decibel maximum off the top of my head. There's also a nighttime decibel that's different than, I think that starts with 10 feet, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a whole section of our code, while this is the Title V, which is actually part of that enforcement, so there are decibel levels that will have to be met. Additionally, they can condition decibel levels through this process.
Thank you, for telling me how to get it.
Well, it's just good that you have that already in place so that when you get the argument from neighbors, if you fall within that range.
I've heard 100% of the time, I'm talking 100% of the time from noise experts, right? This guy's an engineer, he's a really cool guy. He was really honest, thoughtful about the way he presented it to us. And he got the weirdest noise standard. I'm sure Brogan's heard this and back me up on it. And the point is, if you can meet these standards, it's extremely aggressive with respect to the level of attenuation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's probably not onus on you, but probably the city. Did the violation, the person that complained, get addressed? Are they in communication? Were they?
You know, I mean,
what's happening?
it's a weird deal because I've never had a use permit or an AEC or a zone change as a result of a code violation, right?
Right.
So I asked, how can we find out and make this person happy? They said, can't do it, right? You probably know that as well.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the specific code case, but what code case will be open to be investigated by one of our enforcement officers and then a determination made. So what I can say is the planner has been working with their code enforcement to make sure that those are addressed and those through this process.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question, Carly?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
It is a little weird how that, because they were, and we did, we reached out all the we got a letter of support from them. They said there was no problem, so it seemed like you connect the dots and say, well, that wasn't the source.
Right.
And we believe it's somebody here in one of those single family.
You just know, one of my main questions always with any development project
Yeah.
is, has community input been received?
And you know how I operate, don't
Yeah,
you?
I do very well. So it's just my standard question.
No, I appreciate that. We just, there was an incredibly intense, I don't know why it's coming to mind, but there was such an intense hearing in Washington County. I mean, extremely intense today. And at the end of the day, it was about lack of community.
Yeah.
The thing. Interesting. It's, this is a community design and planning process more than, I think, than a legal process.
And a community pub, I will say, and I'll just throw out my 2 cents on this. You guys have done an exceptional job planning this and going through the motions and really
Thank you. I really appreciate
addressing
that,
the issue that's come before you. So
Stuff that you've done to mitigate is incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. No, yeah, it's been,
I've been to that firm. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
My only argument would be you need to play.
Yes, I
Exactly.
They're gonna actually post the parking agreement as a result of my involvement here, which is totally periphery to this. They have an easement granted from this property owner. Now think about that. This property owner, which includes this lot, is granted an easement unencumbered, so full-time use for all of its parking space.
Yeah, that's fine.
They need no permission, you just show them.
That's good.
And you can pull up the document right now on your iPhone or whatever and look at it on, if you knew the document number at Washington County Recorder's Office. So they were very surprised to find that out. I thought it was remarkable that it's what they did. And frankly, there's very little demand for parking here, and it sort of takes care of itself anyway. Once drive through, once, you know, they don't have inside dining, it's pizza.
Right.
So, yeah, I do appreciate your comments because we've worked, this has been going on for, I mean, I think we're coming up on 9 months now. And when we went through the site plan review and then all that violation stuff, and I thought staff was being very unfair to us, to be honest. And now I go, maybe not, yeah, just a little bit harsh, but you know what? They had this violation to deal with, and you know. And so I just got really assertive with doing over and above on mitigation. I think we're there. I sure appreciate hearing that. Yes, sir.
Just to confirm then, when I looked at conditions 9 and 10 on the site plan review, my first thought was, before I heard you speak tonight, why didn't they just go with that? It'd be a lot cheaper and it would conform to the existing code. But what you're saying is that the owner felt a need to go beyond what they were asked to do.
I don't want to overstate that. Thank you. I completely missed the key point. Can we go back to I don't know which one, right? That right there. Okay. Okay, so we're not looking to take any credit for this, right? And this was key to the AEC. The code requires, call that 2 feet, right? The code requires a landscape area that wide. Okay, so it's just entirely punitive, right? When you put this big landscape, we call landscape berm or buffer, and people overstate it, don't really know what it is. So back to the noise guy, imagine if this, and I don't remember what the width is, just call this the landscape buffer. So what is it? Basically ruins the business operation, right? So you got to do whatever you can to protect that investment, right? But we actually came up with, as a result of hiring Luke Saxelby, a better solution, way better solution as it relates to the noise piece, which was the key piece of this, in doing these acoustic panels. And he just shows in decibel meters, in decibel readers, you know, and it showed a much greater reduction than it would be with an evergreen screen for the condition. So that's a visual screen, and we got a better screen too, because now it's a solid hedge versus, you know, trees, you know, filtered in there. Yeah, I mean, our codes are, man, it's just crazy how, you know, aggressive it is, but, you know, good for the neighbors.
Just to follow up on Brooklyn. Yes. Do you think this warrants another look at the actual code, chapter 18, that relates to screening then? If this is,
You know, this is a unique situation, right? Because we have a very limited backyard, commercial space right up against residential. Oftentimes, we look at that screener or buffering, we'll be looking at industrial use against the larger residential with larger parcel sizes. And so that those landscape standards make sense in that way. This is a very unique situation, and that's why we're looking at this flexibility option here, is to allow something that meets the intent of the code without going. So I don't think it is necessarily a Title 18 that needs to be. It is, we have the option here that does allow for this through this process for us to look at that.
I just wondered if that was outdated to the technology that's available now. Regarding the
Side works, I mean, how many cases a lot? You're a complicated one. We work lots there.
The Saxby acoustics thing was very interesting to me.
Yeah.
They projected what the change between what had been the original way to do it and then this new way at certain spots within the backyard of the residences directly behind the wall, if I understood it correctly.
That's correct.
Did they also, I mean, did they physically have to go into those backyards to do that, or was that like?
I think it's modeling, because I think I asked that question on the modeling.
Did they happen to test the total? Was it 49 decibels, 65 by day?
Gosh,
Did they also test the totals there?
They did. I'll send you that. Can I just send you this?
So it was going to be with them.
Yeah, it's, yeah. I'd rather just send you the study because I don't want, I'm not a testing guy.
Would be on the speakers that hang outside, I guess, will it be music or is it just television?
Yeah, those are speakers for speakers for the television. It's got to be 6 feet max height.
And they just, I think some of the pictures show sports events. Is there any like video music or anything like that?
I don't know that. It's just, you know, I think it's on whatever's on the box at a given time.
I encourage you to go in and find out.
Just to check the boxes, I was very interested in the other conditions.
Would you like me to send you that?
Yeah, that'd be great, yeah. The other one that interests me was the accessible. Very big on accessibility.
Yeah.
And I think the condition was specific for a ramp. Is that going to be the solution to make sure it's handicapped accessible?
Yes, that is going in right. You can see where's the door right here. That's going in right here. I think they said, you know, there's the standards, I mean, what's the slope of the ramp? About 0.5% max or something. And so they tried doing it from these 3 steps because, you know, common sense tells me it's just amazing how, again, fierce regulation is at so many different levels, and this is federal, right? But to make this work, it puts the bottom of the ramp like this far away. So I think they were somehow doing it from over here. There's a side door, and this is all flat. Does that make sense?
It does from my knowledge of the place too.
I know that's all flat and they got a big open gate right here. And so I think that's the way to deal with that. I'm not 100% confident in what I'm telling you there. But I remember asking this because I was just there, just so much we're dealing with. And I go, oh, by the way, John, did you hear about ADA access? I said, well, no, you just put a ramp and it's right in here. Well, it's too steep, right? 3 steps in a 10-foot area doesn't work. So it's something wrong. I mean, Brooklyn, can you bail me out on this one too? Is that? I don't know ADA access.
So as far as ADA, there's a national standard, American, Disabilities Act, it's based on an act. So that has specific standards of it. I think it's a 3% rise over 30 feet, can't exceed 30 feet in the after the platform. So they have a very limited area here that they need to get up to probably about 24 inches. And so how that's going to look and how that's ultimately designed, but that would have to be the standard.
So it's going to meet the standards, that I can guarantee you, because they're prepared for it. They were talking about it.
So just for clarification, the inside of the building is already ADA compliant.
Yes.
It's just.
This is all
access
this.
to the exterior.
Right, and our site plan review was for an expansion of a commercial use specifically to allow for the outdoor.
Gotcha.
That was the subject of the SDR. And then that led to the AEC. This stuff is crazy.
Just two very minor questions.
Yes.
Besides the code violation that you've mentioned originally, have there been any other code violations since then? Or
I mean, you know, boy, I don't know if any, I'm telling you what, these operators are really intimidated by all of this, you know. Sometimes you're violating and you don't even know it, but now the conditions are all spelled out, so they're very.
And finally, I know that as an admin member, I got the pink card that was notification. So all the properties around surrounded it. Does anybody know, did we get any comments, public comments?
Yes, we did get one.
I know there was about the apartments. I read that one in the package, the one to the west. That was in, and one other was in support of it, I think, correct? That's it.
One was in support of this.
No, nothing from the residents behind us. Okay,
just Mr. Rossi has a question. I love standing here calling on Mr. Rossi because he was the chairman.
John, you didn't call me that.
I know that you say that every time I see you, but I insist.
One question I just had was on the hedge. Is that a synthetic hedge, artificial, or?
We actually talked about artificial, but the landscape architect and the owner just loves plants. She says she wants vegetative.
Because I was concerned about the maintenance stuff like that. Because when you put a light on it, you got more maintenance.
You got a lot more.
It wouldn't be true for the sound anymore.
See, is this confusing? That's not.
It's
not what it's for. You think it is intuitively, but it doesn't. It's exactly right. It's all about line.
Acoustic towers are gonna take care of that.
That's exactly right. Good. You ask yourself the question sometime when you're in a place where you see those acoustic panels and you see what I'm talking about. So just know it just deadens the sound, you know.
Are there any more questions?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just for the members, I think this is going before the plan commission on the 17th of May.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
right?
what Brooks on
So-
Showtime.
So I'd encourage you on the agenda there, have we provided this link if you would make comments online to the plan.
Now, do you guys submit comments? Like, I mean, it's been a while since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Project review.
Project review form. So they're still doing that and not voting, right?
Right.
Remember when Nancy's.
Correct.
She's down.
Yep. They don't allow, they don't allow us to do that.
2 days.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Your card.
No, my disc.
Oh.
Thank you.
Hearing none. move on.
Just do it, please.
Item D, are there any future agenda items that we have to ask?
Yeah, there is one, just because it was brought up tonight by Councilwoman, is that the Keystone and McCarran stoplight is on the next agenda for NDOT. I would love to hear the results from that. Yeah.
Perfect. I can track that down.
Great.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Is the old RTC building in there or downtown?
Fourth.
It's university or center. So that's becoming the downtown partnership.
It's a great question.
I'm gonna hear more about that.
We can get an update.
Just to build on that, Abby, I think somewhere in the past, people have been asked for an update on the downtown Rainbow Partnership in general. And we had an excellent presentation by Neoma John at the montage. It would be great if we could get somebody to also do that for the Navy channel.
I can ask.
That would be very, very helpful. She's got a great staff there and there's some good programs I think people would be interested in.
Any other?
Are we going to specifically put our potential?
Correct. Yes, and we'll be going over the requirements and the parameters.
Great. Thank you.
Ross, you asked previously about sewer fees, are you still interested in that?
I think it's a big debate and
Right, but we have no updates as of right now from our staff.
the other one would be like about the sixth floor.
No, also no updates yet. It hasn't officially been announced, but yes, that will definitely be in the works soon. I do believe our bill goes yesterday, today. We haven't received an official update yet. We can update you on the bill.
It's at the legislature.
Yeah. Yeah, by Friday. So hopefully by next month, we'll have a definite answer.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to part E. Is there any public comment from anybody in person or by Zoom? Is anybody left? Hearing none, I'll move on to finally adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Good.
Carly Borchard, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Abigail.
Leadership. Leadership.